The chamber of the Galactic Council was a cathedral of stone and steel, carved into the heart of an asteroid that drifted on the border of ancient star lanes. Light from twin suns poured through its vaulted windows, striking banners that represented 200 species, each thread woven with pride and defiance. It was meant to impress, to intimidate. Yet to Velerin, the Orxian archivist, it felt cavernous in its emptiness. 100 years ago, the seats had all been filled, the voices thunderous, the debates fierce. Now gaps yawned between delegations, banners missing, representatives lost or disinterested. And most glaring of all was the absence of humanity's flag, which had once hung near the front like a challenge to the Council's self-importance. The humans had left, and the silence of their absence pressed on Velrin's mind like a weight he could not ignore. Across the chamber, Threxin of Kohler rose with the confidence of a predator who had never known hunger. Tall and scaled, with eyes like shards of obsidian, he leaned forward over the edge of the dais and let his claws scrape the stone. His voice rumbled through the hall, sharpened with arrogance. This assembly wastes itself on shadows. We have wars to resolve, territories to claim, resources to divide. Yet you mutter of ghosts, ghosts who abandon their seat without so much as a word of challenge. Humanity is gone. Irrelevant. Let them rot in their exile. Murmurs rippled across the delegates, some nodding, others whispering doubt. Velrin's mandibles clicked in quiet irritation. He was smaller than Threxin, his body thin and wiry, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the banners above, but his mind was sharper than any blade. He rose slowly, letting the silence settle before he spoke. "You mistake quiet for weakness, Counselor Threxin," Velrin said, his voice steady but edged. "No species builds empires across the stars only to vanish without reason. No species relinquishes power willingly. They left deliberately. That alone should unsettle you." Threxin snorted, baring his teeth in what his kind called a grin, but to others seemed a threat. "Unsettle? You overestimate them. They were reckless, impatient, violent. Their departure spares us their chaos. The galaxy is steadier without their disruptions." Velrin tapped one claw against the armrest of his seat. "Is it steadier, Counselor? Or has their absence torn holes you cannot admit exist? Who maintains the trade lanes once patrolled by their fleets? Who fills the void of their markets, their technology, their ingenuity? Even now, smuggling runs rampant, pirates thrive in regions once stabilized by human colonies. Do not confuse relief with ignorance." For a moment, silence again. The words hovered, heavy and undeniable. Yet pride was a stronger current in the council chamber than truth. Threxin puffed his chest, spreading his scaled arms wide as though to gather the assembly into his confidence. "They were a spark, nothing more," he declared. "Flames burn bright, yes, but they consume themselves. And so humanity consumed itself, lost to its own restlessness, its own hunger for more than it could hold." Velrin tilted his head, his eyes glittering like glass shards. "Then explain this. Reports from the Rim speak of abandoned human cities, intact, undamaged, preserved as if awaiting return. Entire colonies evacuated in perfect order. No chaos. No collapse. A withdrawal as methodical as a surgeon's cut. Tell me, Threxin, is that the mark of a species that consumes itself?" The council chamber shifted uneasily, banners swaying in a draft that wasn't there. Some murmured agreements, others hissed denials. But all listened, because though they had mocked humanity in their absence, each knew the truth Velrin spoke of. The humans had not left like broken exiles. They had vanished like soldiers obeying a plan too vast for anyone else to glimpse. Threxin growled, but his bluster did not bite as sharply now. Rumors, scattered tales, exaggerations of frightened explorers. And yet they multiply, Velrin pressed, stepping down from his dais, letting his insectal limbs clatter softly on the stone. Ships that return from human sectors report silence. Not ruin, not decay, silence. They speak of orbital stations without a flicker of light, entire fleets missing, colonies stripped of life but not of function. Not the aftermath of disaster, but the signature of purpose. They left. But where? And why? The question rang across the chamber, a blade thrust into the heart of denial. Threxen's eyes narrowed, but he did not answer. It was then that a younger voice rose from the lower tier, firm but hesitant. Captain Jareth Venn, commander of one of the Council's scout detachments, had spoken without permission, a breach of protocol that drew stares. Tall, broad-shouldered, his face lined with the weariness of one who had seen too many frontiers, Venn bowed his head only slightly before continuing. "I have seen what the archivist speaks of," Venn said. "My ship entered the Perseid Reach 3 cycles past. We found a city, one of theirs, lying beneath a dome of glass. The lights were out, the towers empty. But there was no ruin. Gardens were pruned, machines shut down with precision. Not a soul remained. It was as if every human had risen at once and departed on cue." The whispers grew louder now, the weight of testimony adding to Velryn's unease. Even Threxen faltered, his gaze darting toward Venn before narrowing again. "You give too much credit to deserters," Threxen spat. "They fled, afraid of something, or perhaps consumed by it. But they are no threat. If they wished to remain, they would sit among us still. Do not let your fear give them more weight than they deserve." Venn did not shrink. His voice deepened, carrying the authority of lived experience. I do not speak of fear, Counselor. I speak of certainty. They did not flee in chaos. They moved with unity. And unity on such a scale means intent." He paused, his eyes scanning the chamber, his gaze heavy with memory. "When humanity moves with intent, history changes. That is what you should fear." The silence that followed was a different kind, not born of denial but of something colder, recognition. Each delegate felt it gnawing beneath their skin. Humanity had never been predictable, never been small, and their absence felt too deliberate, too precise, to be a retreat. Velryn returned to his seat, his thin frame settling into the shadows. "The captain is correct. We cannot pretend otherwise. Something is moving at the edge. Something of their making. And if we do not seek to understand it, we may find ourselves crushed beneath it." Threxen's jaw tightened, his scales twitching with unease he refused to admit. "Let them move," he growled. "The galaxy is ours to govern. If they seek exile, let them vanish into whatever void they desire. We are not beholden to their mysteries." Velryn leaned forward, mandibles twitching in what might have been a grim smile. "No, Counselor. But the void they vanish into may not remain theirs alone. And when they return, or when their shadow touches us, it will not be with words. It will be with something we cannot yet imagine." The banner swayed above them, as though stirred by a wind from beyond the chamber. Delegates shifted uncomfortably, whispers becoming arguments, arguments splintering into shouts. Threxen bellowed above them, demanding order, insisting on strength, while Velryn spoke of vigilance and preparation. In the chaos, Jareth Venn stood silently, his jaw set, his eyes distant. He remembered the abandoned city. He remembered the silence of it, the haunting perfection. He remembered how the stars beyond had seemed to shimmer strangely, as if something vast and unseen moved just beyond the edge of sight. And in that memory, he felt it again, a weight, a presence, not hostile, not friendly, but immense. As the chamber descended into cacophony, Venn whispered words meant for no one but himself. "They didn't leave us. They left all of this." His hand tightened on the railing, knuckles white. "And whatever they're moving toward, it isn't finished." The council roared with division, its mighty chamber a storm of denial and fear. But the question Velryn had spoken still hung in the air, unanswered, unavoidable. Where had humanity gone? And why did the silence feel like the breath drawn before a word that would shatter the galaxy? The silence began as a curiosity, then became a disturbance, and finally grew into a shadow that loomed over the great halls of the Galactic Council. Humanity had not spoken in weeks. The embassies that once bustled with traders, scholars, and diplomats from Earth now stood hollow and locked, their banners removed, their crests scraped from the walls. At first the counselors laughed. Humans, they said, were sulking after a bruised pride. They had always been too sensitive, too quiet compared to the thunderous voices of older empires. But as the days dragged on, and not a single communique, not a single emissary, not even a merchant ship emerged from human space, the laughter died. Chancellor Vorik, towering and broad-scaled, sat at the head of the council chamber. His ridged brow glimmered under the crystalline lights, and his voice cut through the uneasy murmurs. They're playing a drama. You give them too much credit. Humans withdraw because they are weak. They hide because they cannot shoulder responsibility. He leaned back in his throne-like seat, his claws drumming against the armrest as if the matter were settled. Strategist Drelmak, sharp-eyed and hawk-like, stood opposite him. Where Vorik's words thundered, Drelmak's voice sliced with precision. Weak species do not retreat in perfect order. Weak species leave debris, confusion, squabbling factions. But the humans? They close their embassies in silence, shut down their stations without a flicker of protest, vanish from trade routes as if rehearsed. That is not weakness. That is intent. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, skepticism, fear, dismissal, unease. Each delegate sought to impose his own interpretation on the human silence. Yet beneath all the noise was something more dangerous, the absence of certainty. Humanity had been one of the younger members, yes, but their presence in the council had served as a peculiar glue. They were not the strongest nor the richest, but they were steady. Their fleets patrolled vulnerable border sectors. Their merchants bridged the gaps in trade. Their diplomats soothed disputes that might otherwise have torn alliances apart. Without their steadying hand, cracks were already beginning to show. On the trade world of Miras, once one of the busiest hubs, pirates now stalked abandoned shipping lanes where human freighters had once run punctual convoys. On the frontier near the Torga Dominion, raiding clans poured across contested borders, emboldened by the sudden absence of the neutral human patrols that had once kept the peace. The council was slow to respond, for they had grown accustomed to relying on humanity's quiet labor. Drelmak brought forward reports, each more damning than the last. The Beltrax corridor has collapsed. Merchants refuse to travel through it now that the human convoys are gone. 3 worlds face famine, and yet you dismiss this as weakness. His keen eyes locked onto Vorik's heavy-lidded gaze, and for a moment silence returned to the chamber, tense and brittle. Vorik's lip curled into something between disdain and a snarl. So they abandon their allies, their trade partners, and their duties, and you call that strength? What strength is there in cowardice? They abandon nothing, Drelmak countered. His feathers bristled, his tone rising for the first time. They take everything with them. Look at the stations they've left behind, stripped to the bone. Not a console, not a wire, not a scrap of alloy remains. Every evacuation has been methodical, deliberate. They are not fleeing. They are relocating. The word hung in the chamber like a weight. Relocating. Ambassador Reln, an insectoid figure with limbs folded tight, spoke for the first time in hours. If they are relocating, then to where? Our probes detect no colonization efforts within known space. Their colonies on the rim are empty, abandoned in silence. Their fleets do not patrol familiar routes. Where do they go? No one answered. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Days turned into weeks, and the galaxy shifted. Where human stability had once prevailed, disorder now bloomed like weeds in untended soil. Vorik continued to thunder against what he called human betrayal, but his voice began to sound more like protest than conviction. He needed the humans to be weak, for if they were not, then his arrogance would be exposed as blindness. Drelmak knew better. He spent long nights in the archives, reviewing the final communications, studying the pattern of their withdrawal. It was too clean, too purposeful. The first true tremor came when a probe was intercepted on the Council's frontier. It was human-made, sleek and black, its hull absorbing all scans like a void in the stars. It carried no beacon, no diplomatic seal, no transmission, only silence. The patrol that discovered it brought it before the Council, and even Vorik fell quiet as the device floated above the floor, suspended by containment beams. What does it mean? Reln asked. Drelmak studied it, his feathers still. It means they are watching. 4 days afterward, unease stalked the chambers. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some whispered that humans were building a secret armada in the void beyond charted stars. Others claimed they had discovered a new power, something greater than the Council itself, and sought alliance with it. A few even muttered that humans had abandoned the galaxy altogether, stepping beyond some hidden threshold no one else could perceive. Each theory was met with fear, derision, or ridicule, but none could be disproved. Vorik rallied his supporters with speeches of defiance. If they return, they will find the Council ready. Let them sulk in the dark. We are the strength of the galaxy, not Earth. Yet his bravado rang hollow when famine struck two core systems that had once depended on human convoys. Even the mighty fleets of the scaled Chancellor could not conjure food from empty space. The truth was unavoidable. The galaxy was weaker without humanity, and no one could explain why humanity had chosen absence over confrontation. One evening, Drelmak stood alone at the great viewport of the Council spire. The stars stretched before him, countless and eternal, but he could not shake the thought that somewhere out there, humans moved with a purpose unseen. He thought of Marcus Hale, the quiet ambassador whose departure from the chamber weeks earlier had seemed so trivial. His words returned, steady and calm. "We will trouble you no longer." At the time, they had sounded like surrender. Now, they sounded like prophecy. He closed his eyes, recalling the precision of the empty embassies, the silence of the convoys, the stripped stations, the probe that simply watched. No rage, no demands, no ultimatums, only silence. And in that silence was a power none of the Council could measure. When he opened his eyes, he realized that for the first time in living memory, the Council was not laughing. Not at humanity. Not at all. The chamber that once mocked Earth's quiet voice now trembled in the echo of its absence, and for the first time, fear, not arrogance, bound its members together. And somewhere, just beyond the rim of known space, humanity waited. The first reports arrived like whispers carried on a cold wind. Human fleets had been sighted at the farthest edges of known space, their silhouettes crossing star systems the Council had never considered valuable. Outposts once shared with other species were now stripped bare, every resource harvested, every databank erased. The Council demanded explanations, but none came. Where once humanity had been present in every chamber and corridor of the interstellar order, now only shadows and echoes remained. Strategist Drelmak devoted himself to the puzzle. His sharp eyes traced reports scattered across his table, each fragment painting a picture more troubling than the last. The humans were not retreating into isolation, nor were they fractured and leaderless. They were moving, unified, toward the rim. It was not a collapse, it was a migration. But to what? To whom? That question coiled around him like a serpent he could not shake. Chancellor Vorik, meanwhile, grew impatient with theories. His scaled fist struck the Council dais with a thunder that silenced all others. "We waste time on shadows. They scurry into the dark because they cannot endure the light of true powers. Let them hide. They will return, begging for scraps, once their silence starves them." His voice carried confidence, but his followers knew his conviction was brittle. Supply lines strained, markets collapsed, and worlds once pacified by human patrols now burned. His power was slipping, and he knew it. Yet Drelmak was relentless. In session after session, he presented patterns the Chancellor tried to dismiss. The abandoned colonies bore no scars of panic or war. They were evacuated with precision. Food stocks were emptied, fuel reserves drained, machinery dismantled with care. Nothing wasted, nothing left behind. "This is no act of desperation," Drelmak said one evening, his talons tapping against the display screen. "This is the work of a species that knows exactly what it is doing." The chamber fell silent as a new report streamed in. A Council scout ship had intercepted a human vessel at the edge of the rim. The counselors leaned forward as the recording flickered to life, static giving way to the grim face of a man. He was broad-shouldered, his dark uniform without insignia, his expression one of calm defiance. His name was Captain Elias Grant. The Council delegates murmured as his voice filled the chamber. "You pursue us, though we have given no cause for war. Hear this once, We walk a path you cannot follow. Beyond the rim lies our future. We seek the silence beyond the stars. Do not attempt to drag us back. Then the transmission cut, the ship disappearing into warp space with a precision that left even the Council's most advanced trackers blind. Vorik snarled. Empty threats. A lone captain posturing for his species. We should seize them, strip them of their secrets, and remind them of their place. But Drelmak's feathers trembled as he replayed the words. The tone was not one of weakness or bluster. It was the calm of someone who no longer feared consequence. It was the voice of a man who had already left the Council behind in his mind, who looked toward horizons others could not yet see. The debate turned violent. Vorik demanded retaliation, sending fleets to reclaim the abandoned sectors. Drelmak cautioned restraint. Every attempt to chase them ends the same, he said. Empty stations, stripped colonies, and their fleets vanishing deeper into the unknown. We cannot catch what is not wished to be caught. And I fear if we press too hard, we may provoke what we are unprepared to face. For weeks the Council argued, while the galaxy trembled without its quiet stabilizer. Wars spread like cracks through brittle glass. Clans raided borders once policed by human squadrons. Trade guilds collapsed under the weight of famine. And always, in the silence between crises, came the question, what did humanity seek at the edge? Rumors blossomed in the void of knowledge. Some said the humans had uncovered ruins older than the Council itself, artifacts whispering of powers beyond comprehension. Others claimed they had discovered another civilization outside the rim, one greater than anything the Council had ever known, and were forging an alliance. The most chilling rumor spoke of signals, strange transmissions detected in the deep dark, patterns of sound and silence that no Council codebreakers could decipher. The only certainty was that the humans were listening to them. One evening, a secret assembly gathered in Drelmak's quarters. He, Vorik, and Ambassador Reln met in the dim glow of starlight beyond the viewport. Reln's chittering limbs folded and unfolded in agitation. If the humans have found something, he said, then they are not abandoning us. They are escaping us. Vorik hissed. Superstition. They flee responsibility. Nothing more. Drelmak leaned forward, his eyes sharp as knives. No, Chancellor. You fail to see the truth. They are not fleeing. They are ascending. Every move they make, every resource they strip, every silence they maintain, it speaks of preparation. They are building towards something vast, something beyond us all. The words hung heavy. For the first time, Vorik had no retort. Days later, another discovery sent ripples of fear through the Council. Patrols at the rim found vast skeletal frames orbiting a dead star, structures larger than any station known, their latticework spanning thousands of kilometers. They bore the unmistakable mark of human engineering. No signals, no crews, only the beginnings of something colossal. Vorik's temper flared, but Drelmak's feathers lay flat in cold understanding. This is what they build for, he whispered. Gateways, bridges, or weapons, I do not know. But I know this. Humanity does not look inward. They look outward. And we are no longer their horizon. The Council chamber dissolved into uproar. Some demanded war to seize the structures before they were completed. Others counseled patience, fearing the unknown. But beneath every argument lay the same truth. The galaxy no longer controlled humanity's fate. Humanity had seized its own destiny, and it lay in silence beyond the edge. Drelmak returned once more to the viewport that evening, staring at the infinite stretch of stars. He remembered Elias Grant's words, "We walk a path you cannot follow." It was not arrogance nor threat.
It was a simple statement of fact.
For the first time, the strategist felt something he had never known in all his years of war and council, an edge of awe, tinged with fear. Humanity had been underestimated because they spoke softly, because they preferred reason to rage. But now, in their silence, he saw the outline of something far greater. And in that silence, he realized, the galaxy's true danger lay not in what humanity might do to them, but in what they might become without them. The Council slept uneasily, each member wondering whether the humans were building gates to another universe, forging alliances with entities beyond imagination, or leaving the galaxy behind entirely. None could say for certain. Only one thing was undeniable. Humanity had chosen the edge, and they would not be turning back. The galaxy had grown louder without humanity. Where once their steady hand had softened disputes and patrolled borders, now only chaos remained. War banners rose in forgotten sectors, trade collapsed in entire quadrants, and fleets clashed where human neutrality had once kept peace. In the council chambers, the voices that had once laughed at mankind's absence now shouted in anger and desperation, each blaming the other for the turmoil. But even amid that uproar, it was the silence of humanity that weighed most heavily upon them. Chancellor Vorik had grown more restless with every report. His scaled fist slammed against the council table often enough to leave dents. He raged at his allies, his enemies, and his subordinates. We have let them mock us with their silence long enough. They strip colonies, build secret engines in the dark, and still we sit and watch. No more. If they will not speak, then we will force their hand. His eyes burned with pride, but behind the fury lurked fear. The cracks in his authority were spreading as quickly as the disorder beyond the council's reach. Strategist Drelmac listened, his feathered head bowed slightly, though his sharp eyes missed nothing. He had spent sleepless weeks piecing together what the humans were constructing at the rim. The skeletal structures around the dead star haunted him. Their scale was beyond comprehension, beyond even the arrogance of empires like Vorik's. When the Chancellor finished his tirade, Drelmac rose. His voice was calm, measured, yet carried an edge that cut through the noise. You would march our fleets into the unknown, blind and unprepared, Drelmac said. And what then, Chancellor? Suppose you find humanity waiting, united, with engines we do not understand. Suppose those great structures are not fortresses but doors. Will you batter against them until they open? And when they open, will you survive what lies beyond? The chamber quieted. Even Vorik found no immediate retort, though his jaw tightened with rage at being challenged. Ambassador Reln, clicking uneasily, added his voice. Every world suffers now. Every fleet burns fuel fighting wars that humanity once prevented with words alone. We mocked them for their quiet, but I tell you, their absence has brought more ruin than their armies ever could. We are unraveling, and the thread they carried is gone. The silence that followed was not relief, but dread. They all knew Reln spoke truth. Humanity's absence was a wound that bled deeper with each passing day. The Council's fear sharpened into panic when a second series of discoveries was reported. Drones sent to the rim captured images of colossal rings taking shape around stars, titanic arcs of alloy stretching across space like the bones of giants. They were not weapons, at least not in any form recognizable. They were engines, gateways perhaps, bridges to places beyond their charts. And in the shadows of those arcs, entire human fleets labored in silence. The sight was terrifying not for its aggression, but for its indifference. Humanity did not build in secrecy to threaten the Council. They built as if the Council no longer mattered at all. Vorik refused to believe it. They are posturing. They want us to tremble while they prepare their return. I will not let them dictate fear to us. Yet his voice cracked as he spoke, and Drelmac saw the truth in the Chancellor's eyes. It was not rage that fueled him now. It was terror disguised as pride. The decisive moment came with the interception of a final transmission. A listening station at the edge of Council space caught it by chance, a narrowband signal, human in origin, encoded but unhidden. When decrypted, the words were simple, almost stark. We do not leave in anger. We leave because the galaxy is too small. Those words shattered the Council's last illusions. Humanity was not retreating from weakness, nor preparing to strike back in vengeance. They had simply chosen to outgrow the galaxy itself. All the wars, all the debates, all the arrogance of ancient empires meant nothing to them now. They were gone, and in their going, they had left the Council exposed to its own flaws. The chamber descended into chaos. Some demanded pursuit, insisting humanity's secrets could not be left unchecked. Others argued that to follow was to invite destruction. Vorik roared until his throat bled that humans must be dragged back into the fold. But Drelmak stood apart, his feathers still, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond the chamber's vaulted windows. When silence fell, he spoke once more, his voice carrying the weight of finality. You mistake their absence for betrayal. You mistake their silence for weakness. But do you not see? Humanity has done what no council ever dared. They have severed themselves from our petty rivalries, our endless wars. They have stepped beyond. And we cannot follow, because we are too bound to what we are. Vorik lunged forward, his scales rippling with fury. You speak as though they are gods. They are not gods. They are men. Drelmak's eyes narrowed, his words a whisper that struck harder than any shout.
Yes, men.
And that is what should terrify you most. The council splintered in the days that followed. Fleets were dispatched toward the rim despite Drelmak's warnings, each hoping to seize some fragment of humanity's new power. None returned. The empty silence where their signals had once been was answer enough. Rumors spread that their ships had been swallowed not by human firepower, but by the vast structures themselves, drawn into gates that closed behind them, never to reopen. Worlds burned. Empires weakened. The balance that had once relied on humanity's quiet presence collapsed into civil war and piracy. But Drelmak's thoughts were not with the wars of the Council. His thoughts lingered always on the rim, where silent fleets worked among stars, where arcs of alloy stretched like bridges to eternity, where men like Elias Grant had spoken with calm certainty of a path no one else could follow. One night, standing alone at the viewport, Drelmak allowed himself to feel what he had suppressed for months.
Awe.
He had spent his life mastering war, anticipating every enemy move, dissecting every rival's ambition. Yet never had he encountered a strategy like this. Humanity had waged no battle, issued no ultimatum, claimed no throne. They had simply left, and in leaving, they had conquered the galaxy without firing a single shot. The stars shimmered before him, countless and eternal, but for the first time they felt small. Somewhere out there, beyond the rim, humanity walked into silence, into a future no other species could yet imagine. The galaxy would curse them, mourn them, fear them, but it would never forget them. For in their absence, they had become greater than any warlord or emperor could ever dream. Drelmak whispered to the void, his words meant for no one yet carried into the stars all the same. We thought them weak because they were quiet, but it was the quiet that made them strong. And now the galaxy trembles in the echo of what it has lost. Behind him, the council screamed and fractured. Before him, the stars stretched endless and unknowable. And between them lay humanity, gone, ascended, unreachable. The galaxy was left to its own ruin, while mankind, without a sound, had already stepped into eternity.